Imagine a world where the moment you step into your new office, shake hands with your new team, and sit down at your new desk, you're not just an employee, you're an owner. That's right, an owner. From day one, you have a real, tangible stake in the company's future, its profits, and its decisions. You're not just working for a paycheck, you're working to grow your own mini empire within the company. Sounds like a dream, doesn't it? But what if I told you this could be our reality? Today we're diving deep into a revolutionary idea that could redefine work, wealth, and even the fabric of our society: mandatory employee ownership for every business. Alright, so the first thing you're probably wondering is, how is mandatory employee ownership different from a co-op business structure? Great question. At first glance, they seem pretty similar. Both models aim to give you, the employee, a real stake in your workplace. You're not just clocking in and out, you're part of the business in a meaningful way, sharing in the profits and having a say in big decisions. In both scenarios, co-ops and mandatory employee ownership, you're empowered as an employee. You're not just a cog in the machine, you're a part owner. This leads to a more democratic workplace where your voice actually matters. And let's not forget the financial perks. In both models, you get a slice of the profit pie, which is a fantastic way to distribute wealth more equitably. But here's where things start to diverge. In a co-op, every employee generally has an equal share and an equal vote. It's like a utopian workplace democracy. But in a mandatory employee ownership model, your share could vary based on your role, your tenure, and other factors. So the CFO with 20 years at the company might have a bigger slice than the intern who just started last week. Another key difference is how these models come into being. Co-ops are usually born as co-ops. They start with this democratic, everyone gets a share model. But mandatory employee ownership could be applied to any existing company, whether it's a mom-and-pop store or a multinational corporation. That makes it a super versatile model that could shake up various industries. Capital investment is another area where these two diverge. In a co-op, you usually have to buy in, which can be a barrier for some people. But with mandatory employee ownership, those shares are granted as part of your employment package. No buy-in means it's accessible to everyone, regardless of their financial situation. Let's also talk about market presence. Co-ops are awesome, but they're more common in certain sectors like retail and agriculture. Mandatory employee ownership, on the other hand, could be a game changer for any industry. Imagine owning a piece of a cutting-edge tech firm or a major finance company. And lastly, there's the legal stuff. Co-ops operate under a specific set of laws designed for, well, co-ops. Mandatory employee ownership would require a whole new legal framework, potentially changing corporate laws as we know them. Okay, so we've talked about what mandatory employee ownership could look like and how it compares to co-ops. But to really understand this concept, we need to take a step back and look at the history. Trust me, this isn't a boring history lesson. It's crucial context that will make the rest of this discussion way more meaningful. First off, let's talk about ESOPs, or Employee Stock Ownership Plans. These have been around in the United States since the 1970s. The idea was to give employees a stake in companies that they work for, usually through retirement plans. While not as radical as what we're discussing today, ESOPs were a step towards democratizing the workplace. Companies like Publix supermarkets have successfully implemented ESOPs, showing that employee ownership can be both profitable and ethical. But ESOPs are just one piece of the puzzle. Let's jet set over to Spain and talk about the Mondragon Corporation. Founded in 1965, Mondragon is a federation of worker cooperatives, and in 2013 it was Spain's 4th largest industrial and 10th largest financial group. It's a living, breathing example of how employee ownership can scale and thrive. Workers at Mondragon don't just punch the clock, they vote on company decisions and share in the profits. Now you might be thinking, that's all great, but who are the brains behind these ideas? Well, let me introduce you to some thought leaders who have been championing these concepts for years. First up is Richard Wolff, an economist who's been a vocal advocate for worker cooperatives. He argues that giving workers a seat at the table isn't just fair, it's good business. Richard Wolff's work is a must-read if you're interested in this topic. He's written books, given talks, and even hosts a show called Economic Update, where he delves into these issues. His work provides the intellectual backbone for a lot of the discussions around worker cooperatives and employee ownership. Another name you should know is Gar Alperovitz. He's written extensively about democratizing wealth and has been a key figure in discussions about economic reform. He goes beyond just employee ownership. He talks about community ownership of resources, public banks, and other ways to distribute wealth more equitably. Both Wolf and Alperovitz are part of a larger movement that's questioning traditional capitalist structures. They're not just academics, they're activists pushing for real-world change. Their ideas have influenced policy proposals and have been discussed in boardrooms and on the floors of legislative bodies. Let's take a moment to imagine what a world with mandatory employee ownership might look like. In the year 2035, Emily, a 25-year-old software developer, lands her first job at Futurify, a tech company specializing in AI solutions. Unlike her parents' generation, Emily doesn't just receive a salary, she becomes a part owner of Futurify on her first day. As Emily sits down at her desk, she's handed not just an employee badge, but also a digital certificate confirming her ownership stake. Emily attends ownership orientation, where she learns about her rights and responsibilities as a part owner. She's thrilled, but also a bit overwhelmed. She starts to notice the difference in workplace culture. Employees are more engaged, meetings are more democratic, and there's a palpable sense of community. Emily's first ownership dividend arrives, and in addition to her salary, she receives a share of the company's quarterly profits. It's not a huge sum, but it's enough to make her student loan payments less daunting. Emily gets the opportunity to vote on new company initiative, and she feels empowered knowing her voice actually matters. Over the years, she climbs the corporate ladder, her ownership stake grows, not just enriching her, but also deepening her commitment to the company's success. Emily retires at 55, not just with a pension, but also with a substantial ownership stake that she can either sell back to the company or hold on to until the end of her life, continuing to collect an ownership dividend. She reflects on her journey, realizing that the mandatory employee ownership model didn't just change her life, it changed the way she viewed community, success, and the very concept of work. Wouldn't that be nice? Have you worked anywhere that gave you stock? Did it impact your decision-making as an employee? Let me know in the comments below. I want to take a moment to highlight two other out-of-the-box ideas that I think fit within this discussion: universal basic equity and blockchain for ownership. We've all heard of universal basic income, right? That's where every citizen gets a regular, unconditional sum of money. But what if we took it a step further? What if instead of UBI, you received a share of the aggregated equity of all companies? Imagine owning a tiny piece of every publicly traded company in your country. You wouldn't just benefit from the success of the company you work for, but from the success of your entire nation's economy. Talk about aligning individual success with collective prosperity, and it helps deal with the potential upcoming transition to a labor-light economy thanks to automation and artificial intelligence. But how would we manage all of this? Enter the second out-of-the-box idea, blockchain for ownership. Blockchain technology, like those used for cryptocurrencies, has the potential to revolutionize how we manage and transfer ownership stakes. We're talking about a transparent, secure, and highly efficient system that can handle everything from stock trades to voting rights. Imagine a world where your ownership stake in a company is recorded on a blockchain. Everything would be transparent and nearly instantaneous. You could even use smart contracts to automate things like profit sharing and voting. Companies are already experimenting with tokenizing assets and managing them on a blockchain. It's a small step from there to a fully blockchain managed system of employee ownership. And the best part? It would be incredibly hard to cheat or manipulate such a system, thanks to the inherent security features of blockchain technology. I'm sure smarter people than I could provide so much more depth about these two ideas and highlight their pros and cons, but I wanted to mention them as I believe, just like mandatory employee ownership, they can help work towards a more modern and fair society. If you've enjoyed this video, check out my video on fixing capitalism, where I cover some thoughts on how we really need to be aiming for a post-capitalist society before this late-stage capitalist society chews us all up.